Hey everybody, TikTok, welcome. Today's Go Day. Queuing up my other two networks, and we can get on with this. Good afternoon, good to see you all. Let me go ahead and queue this up, and we'll get going. It's just switched screen on me. Yeah. Okay, give me a
Grab your
second.
popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin.
Hey everybody, welcome. Happy Sunday. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Hopefully we're still going to continue our great weekend, right? Welcome. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next at least an hour, 15 minutes, something like that. Broadcasting currently on TikTok tonight and two other networks that I can't mention because of TikTok, right? All right. So I just want to make sure that everything is started properly. So let me bear with me for a second so I can get TikTok going and other stuff here that I've got going on. Okay. All right. So for everybody over at TikTok, this is Sunday Reading Day. And at the other two networks, this is Sunday Reading Day, where I read from a paranormal themed book. Sometimes the stories are true, sometimes they're not. In today's case, some are true, but others are written by people like Edgar Allan Poe and people like that. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to read this book. There's been some really cool stories, and like I said, a couple of them were true stories that I remember, hearing about as a paranormal investigator. TikTok, for what it's worth, I cannot see your gifting as well because you're far away. So one of my moderators should be in there to thank you for any gifts that I get. I see a popular there. I'll go popular. I'll do that one. But welcome everybody. So I'm going to read the book for about an hour. But anyway, my name is Charlotte. I'm also, I'm the owner of California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California, where I'm also a tarot card reader over on TikTok. I do tarot Monday through Saturday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And I do 3-card reads. They're general reads, past, present, perfect. So if anybody on the other networks want to come on over and join us for that, that would be great. That's over at California Haunts on TikTok. And welcome everybody on the other networks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So again, I'm going to be reading from Modern Famous Ghost Stories tonight. And there's like this story where I think we're pretty well almost done with it. And then the mic's bouncing around, you can hear it. And then we're going to have, I think, two smaller stories, and that's going to end it. Now, with the weather changing like it is, I am going to be starting to go in my backyard and lighting I call it campfire, but in my fire pit. And California Haunts, my team, has done over 200 investigations, and some of them have been commercial jobs. Some of them, the majority of them have been residentials for us. So I'm going to be pulling from those files to tell you really true ghost stories from the investigations that we've had. So that's going to be starting maybe next Sunday or the Sunday after, but we're going to start doing that by the fireside and roasting marshmallows and doing all that stuff. Tonight, again, I'm reading from a paranormal themed book. I've been doing this for almost 3 years, and I think you guys enjoy it. You go and grab some hot cocoa or tea or whatever it is you drink, and dim those lights, put the fireplace on, and do that kind of thing, and just listen to some creepy ghost stories, But I welcome everybody. Everybody is welcome. And just behave yourselves, and we're going to have a good time tonight, okay? So like I said, I'll read for about an hour. I do have a goal of collecting 6 corgis over on TikTok. If you could help me out with that, that would be wonderful. If not, like, follow, share. Let's see if we can get 500 likes today. 500 to 1,000. Let's see if we can get, let's see if we can get, whoa, I don't like the way this is behaving. Let's see if we can't get like anywhere from 500, 1,000 to like 3,000 likes today. So double tap that screen, okay? All right, that being said, let's get going. And we're in the middle of this particular chapter of Famous Modern Ghost Stories. And it's an interesting story. It's about a haunted vineyard. Gentleman rents a house for the spring, and it happens to have this vineyard. So he rents it out. And it turns out that there's a ghost in this vineyard. But to give you some background on it real quick, too, is that he rents this house. He goes in and he starts looking around, and there's a bookcase. And the bookcase has a bunch of books written in French in it. And so he's fascinated by the whole thing because he doesn't get why it's happening. But soon he meets it. He starts hearing voices out in this vineyard. And it's a young female voice. And so he starts to put it together. because she speaks French. Bear in mind, I do not speak French. Okay, so when I try to read through this stuff, it's hysterical. It's hysterical. So let's have some fun and relax. And like I said, dim your lights. Let's get spooky and enjoy today's read. Okay, and yeah, you can give me some corgis. That'd be great too. All right, guys. So here we are. Time is now 6:37 p.m. Pacific. I will go till 7:37 p.m. Pacific for this. Thank you for the follow. Thank you so much. It was certainly uncanny to hear that voice going to and fro in the orchard. There, somewhere amid the bright, sun-dazzled boughs, yet not a human creature to be seen, not another house, even within a half mile. The most materialistic mind could hardly but conclude that here was something not dreamed of in our philosophy. It seemed to me that the only reasonable explanation was the entirely irrational one, that my orchard was indeed haunted by some beautiful young spirit with some sorrow of lost joy that would not let her sleep quietly in her grave. And next day, I had a curious confirmation of my theory. Once more, I was lying under my favorite tree, half reading and half watching sound, lulled into a dream by the whir of insects and spices called up from the earth by the hot sun. As I bent over the page, I suddenly had the that someone was leaning over my shoulder and reading with me, and that a girl's long hair was falling over me down onto the page. The book was Ronsard. I had found it. I had found it in the little bedroom. I turned, but again there was nothing there. Yet this time I knew that I had not been dreaming, and I cried out, "Poor child, tell me of your grief, that I may help your sorrowing heart to rest." But of course there was no answer. Yet that night I dreamed a strange dream. I thought I was in the orchard again in the afternoon, and once again heard the strange singing. But this time, as I looked up, the singer was no longer invisible. Coming toward me was a young girl with wonderful blue eyes, filled with tears, and gold hair that fell to her waist. She wore a straight white robe that might have been a shroud of bridal dress, or a bridal dress. She appeared not to see me, though she came directly to the tree where I was sitting, and there she knelt and buried her face in the grass and sobbed as if her heart would break. Her long hair fell over her like a mantle, and in my dream I stroked it and murmured words of comfort for a sorrow I did not understand. Then I woke suddenly, as one does from dreams. The moon was shining brightly into the room. Rising from my bed, I looked out into the orchard. It was almost as bright as day. I could plainly see the tree of which I had been dreaming. And then a fantastic notion possessed me. Slipping on my clothes, I went out into one of the old barns and found a spade. Then I went to the tree where I had seen the girl weeping in my dream and dug down at its foot. I had dug a little more than a foot when my spade hit upon some hard substance. And in a few more moments, I had uncovered and exhumed a small box, which, on examination, proved to be one of those pretty old-fashioned Chippendale work boxes used by our grandma needles in. Their reels of cotton and skeins of silk. After smoothing down the little grave in which I had found it, I carried the box into the house and under the lamplight examined its contents. Then at once I understood. I understood why that sad spirit went to and fro in the orchard, singing those little French songs. Treasure trove I had found under the apple tree, the buried treasure of an unquiet and suffering soul, proved to be a number of love letters written mostly in French, in a very picturesque hand. Letters, too, written by some 5 or 6 years before. Perhaps I should not have read them, yet I read them with such reverence for the beautiful impassioned love that animated them, and literally made them smell sweet and blossomy in the dust, that I felt I had the sanction of the dead to make myself the confidant of their story. Among the letters were little songs, two of which I had heard the strange young voice singing in the orchard. And, of course, there were many withered flowers and such like remembrances of a bygone rapture. Now, that night, could I make out a whole story, though it was not difficult to define its essential tragedy. And later, on a gossip in the neighborhood, and a headstone in the churchyard told me the rest. The unquiet young soul that had sung so wistfully to and fro in the orchard was my landlord's daughter. She was the only child of her parents, a beautiful, willful girl, exotically unlike those from whom she was sprung and among whom she lived with a disdainful air of exile. She was, as a child, a little creature of fairy fancies, and as she grew up, it was plain to her father and to her mother that she had come from another world than theirs. To them, she seemed like a child in an old fairy tale, strangely found on his hearth by some shepherd as, as he returns from the fields at evening. A little fairy girl swaddled in fine linen and dowered with a mysterious bag of gold. Soon, she developed delicate spiritual needs to which her simple parents were strangers. From long truancies in the woods, she would come home laden with mysterious flowers, and soon she came back to ask for books and pictures and music, of which the poor souls that had given her birth had never heard. Finally, she had her way, and went to study at a certain fashionable college. And there, the brief romance of her life began. There she met a romantic young Frenchman who had read Ronsard to her and written her those picturesque letters I had found in the old mahogany workbox. And after a while, the young Frenchman had gone back to France, and the letters had ceased. Month by month went by, and at length, one day she sat wistful at the window, looking out at the foolish sunlit road. A message came. He was dead. That headstone in the village churchyard tells the rest. She was very young to an alive, scarcely 19 years old. And the dead who have died young, with all their hopes and dreams still like unfolded buds within their hearts, do not rest so quietly in the grave as those who have gone through the long day from morning until the evening and are only too glad to sleep. Hi, Pamela. Next day, I took the little box to a quiet corner of the orchard and made a little made a little pyre of fragmented boughs. For so I interpreted the wish of that young, unquiet spirit. And the beautiful words are now safe, taken up again into the aerial spaces from which they came. But since then, the birds sing no more. So that was it. So that was the end of that one. But since then, the birds sing no more little French songs in my orchard. So I guess once he realized what was going on in the secret, that was the end, of the ghost. Okay. So the next one is The Bowman by Arthur Machen. And again, there's like this story, another story, and then we're done with this book. It was during the retreat of the 80,000, and the authority of the censorship is sufficient excuse for not being more explicit. But it was on the most awful day of that awful time, on the day when ruin and disaster came so near that their shadow fell over London far away. And, without any certain news, the hearts of men failed within them and grew frantic, as if the agony of the army in the battlefield had entered into their souls. On this dreadful day, then, when 300,000 men in arms, with all their artillery, swelled like a flood against the little English company, there was one point above all other points in our battle line that was for a time in awful danger, not merely of defeat, but of utter annihilation. With the permission of the censorship and the military expert, this corner may, perhaps, be described as a salient. And if this angle were crushed and broken, then the English force as a whole would be shattered. The Allied left would be turned, and Sedan would be inevitably follow. All the morning, the German guns had thundered and shrieked against this corner, and against 1,000 or so of men who held it. The men joked at the shells and found funny names for them, and had bets around them, and greeted them with scraps of music hall songs. But the shells came on and burst, and tore good Englishmen limb from limb, and tore brother from brother. And as the heat of the day increased, so did the fury of that terrific cannon fire. There was no help, it seemed. The English artillery was good, but there was not nearly enough of it. It was being steadily battered into scrap iron. There comes a moment in a storm at sea when people say to one another, it is at its worst. It can blow no harder. And then there is a blast 10 times more fierce than before. So it was in these British trenches. There were no stouter hearts in the whole world than the hearts of these men. But even they were appalled at the 70 times heated hell of the German cannonade fire upon them. Guys, hang on. I forgot to do something. I got to plug this thing in. I forgot. I don't want to run out of juice on you guys. Hang on. That's my fault. I got so many starting then. I forgot. There you go. Now you guys are okay. Okay. There were no stouter hearts in the whole world than the hearts of these men. But even they were appalled as the 7 times he held the German cannons fell upon them and overwhelmed them and destroyed them. And at this very moment, they saw from their trenches that a tremendous host was moving against their lines. 500 of the 1,000 remained, and as far as they could see, the German infantry was pressing on against them, column upon column. A gray world of men, 10,000 of them, as it appeared afterwards. There was no hope at all. They shook their hands, some of them. One man improvised a new version of the battle song, Goodbye, Goodbye to Tipperary, ending with, and we shan't get there. And they all went on firing steadily. The officer pointed out that such an opportunity for high-class fancy shooting might never occur again. The Tipperary humorist asked, what price Sydney Street? And the few machine pew-pews did their best. But everybody knew it was of no use. The unalive gray bodies in companies and battalions, as others came on and on and on, and they swarmed and stirred and advanced from beyond and beyond. World without end, amen, said one of the British soldiers with some irrelevance as he took aim, and then he remembered. He says he cannot think why or whereof. A queer vegetarian restaurant in London, where he had once or twice eaten eccentric dishes of cutlets made of lentils and nuts that pretended to be steak. On all the plates in this restaurant, there was printed a figure of St. George in blue, with the motto, Ad sit Inglis Sanctus, I can't do Latin either, Georgius. May St. George be a present help to the English. This soldier happened to know Latin and other useless things, and now, as he fired at his man in the great advancing mass, 300 yards away, he uttered the pious vengeance motto. The pious vegetarian motto. He went on firing to the end, and at last, Bill, on his right, had to clout him cheerfully over the head to make him stop, pointing out as he did, so that the king's ammunition cost money, and it was not likely to be wasted in drilling funny patterns into unalive Germans. Guys, this book was written in the 30s, although I think around 30s, 40s, sometimes in the 1800s, these books, so they're not politically correct. So I'm doing my best to, not let the TikTok police or the other internet police get me on this stuff. So just bear with me, okay? Because there's certain words I cannot use. For as the Latin scholar uttered his invocation, he felt something between a shudder and an electric shock pass through his body. The roar of the battle died down in his ears to a gentle murmur. Instead of it, he says, he heard a great voice and a shout louder than a thunder peal crying, Array, array, array! His heart grew hot as a burning coal. It grew cold as ice within him, as it seemed to him that a tumult of voices answered to his summons. He heard, or seemed to hear, thousands shouting, St. George, St. George! Ha, monsieur! Ha! Sweet saint, grant us good deliverance. St. George from merry England! Hurrah! Hurrah! Monsignor St. George succor us! Ha, St. George, ha! St. George, a long bow and a strong bow. Heaven's knight, aid us. As the soldier heard these voices, he saw before him, beyond the trench, a long line of shapes, with a shining about them. They were like men who drew the bow, and with another shout, their cloud of arrows flew singing and tingling through the air towards the German host. The other men in the trench were firing all the while. They had no hope, but they aimed just as if they had been shooting at Bisley. Suddenly, one of them lifted up his voice in the plainest English. God help us, he bellowed to the man next to him. But we're blooming marvels. Look at those gray gentlemen. Look at them. Do I see them? They're not going down in dozens nor in hundreds. It's thousands. It is. Look. There's a regiment gone while I'm talking to ye. Shut it, the other soldier began aim. What are you gassing about? But he gulped with astonishment, even as he spoke, for indeed, the grey men were falling by the thousands. The English could hear the guttural scream of the German officers. the crackle of the revolvers as they shot the reluctant and still line after line crashed to the earth. All the while, the Latin-bred soldier heard the cry, "Hurrah, hurrah, Monseigneur, dear saint! Quick to our aid! Saint George, help us! High Chevalier, defend us!" The singing arrows fled so swift and thick that they darkened the air. The heathen horde melted from before them. "More machine guns," Bill yelled to Tom. "Don't hear them," Tom yelled back. "But thank God anyway. They've got it in the neck." In fact, there were 10,000 unalive German soldiers left before that salient of the English army, and consequently, there was no Sedan. In Germany, a country ruled by scientific principles, the great general staff decided that the contemptible English must have employed shells containing an unknown gas of a poisonous nature, as no wounds were discernible on the bodies of the unalive German soldiers. But the man who knew what nuts tasted like when they called themselves steak knew also that St. George had brought his Agincourt bowmen to help the English. So that's the end of that one. So that is no story when you think about it, because St. George at that point was dead. So there you have, St. George came to help them all. So that's kind of cool. All right. This is called A Ghost by Guy de Maupassant. Okay, we're French, so here we go. Like I said, I don't speak French, so we'll just roll with it. We were speaking of sequestration, alluding to a recent lawsuit. It was at the close of a friendly evening in a very old mansion in the Rue de Grenelle. Here we go. And each of the guests had a story to tell, which he assured us was true. Ricardo, I know you're listening. I know you're laughing at me. I have a friend that lives in New Orleans, and every time I do this French stuff, he just rolls over laughing. Then the old Marquis de la Tour Samuel, 82 years of age, rose and came forward to lean on the mantelpiece. He told the following story in a slightly quavering voice. "I also have witnessed a strange thing, so strange that it has been the nightmare of my life. It happened 46 years ago, and yet there's not a month when I do not see it again in my dreams. From that day, I have borne a mark, a stamp of fear. Do you understand? Yes. For 10 minutes, I was prey to the terror in such a way that ever since a constant dread has remained in my soul. Unexpected sounds chill me to the heart. Objects which I can ill distinguish in the evening. Shadows make me long to flee. I'm afraid at night. No, I would not have owned such a thing before reaching my present age. But now I may tell everything. One may fear imaginary old. Sorry about that. I may tell everything. One may fear imaginary dangers at 82 years old. But before actual danger, I've never turned back. That affair so upset my mind, filled me with such a deep, mysterious unrest, that I never could tell it. I kept it in that inmost part, that corner where we conceal our sad, our shameful secrets, all the weakness of our life which cannot be confessed. I'll tell you that strange happening just as it took place, with no attempt to explain it. Unless I went mad for 1 short hour, it must be explainable, though. Yet, I was not mad, and I will prove it to you. Imagine, if you will. Here are the simple facts. It was 1827, in July. I was quartered with my regiment in Rouen. One day, as I was strolling on the quay, I came across a man I believed I recognized, though I could not place him with certainty. I instinctively went more slowly, ready to pause. The stranger saw my impulse, looked at me, and fell into my arms. It was a friend of my younger days, of whom I had been very fond. He seemed to have become half a century older in the 5 years since I had seen him. His hair was white, and he stooped in his walk, as if he were exhausted. He understood my amazement and told me the story of his life. A terrible event had broken him down. He had fallen madly in love with a young girl and married her in a kind of dreamlike ecstasy. After a year of unalloyed bliss and unexhaustible passion, she had unalived suddenly of heart disease, no doubt killed by love itself. He had left the country on the very day of her funeral, and had come to live in this hotel at Rouen, R-O-U-E-N. He remained there, solitary and desperate, grief slowly, grief slowly mining him, so wretched that he constantly thought of unaliving himself. As I thus came across you again, he said, I shall ask a great favor of you. I want you to go to my chateau and get some papers I urgently need. They are in the writing desk of our room. I cannot send a servant or a lawyer, as the errand must be kept private. I want absolute silence. I shall give you the key to the room, which I locked carefully myself before leaving, and the key to the writing desk. I shall also give you a note from the gardener, who will let you in. Come to breakfast with me tomorrow, and we'll talk the matter over. I promised to render him that slight service. It would mean but a pleasant excursion for me, his home not being more than 25 miles from Rowan. I could go there in an hour on horseback. At 10 o'clock the next day, I was with him. We breakfasted alone together, and yet he did not utter more than 20 words. He asked me to excuse him. The thought that I was going to visit the room where his happiness lay shattered upset him. Indeed, he seemed perturbed, worried, as if some mysterious struggle were taking place in his soul. At last, he explained exactly what I was to do. It was very simple. I was to take 2 packages of letters and some papers, locked in the first drawer at the right of the desk, which I had the key. He added, I need not ask you not to glance at them. I was almost hurt by his words, and told him so rather sharply. He stammered, Forgive me, I suffer so much, and tears came down to his eyes. I left about 1 o'clock to accomplish my errand. The day was radiant, and I rushed through the meadows listening to the song of the larks and the rhythm beat of my sword on my riding boots. Then I entered the forest, set my horse to walking. Branches of the trees slowly caressed my face, and now and then I would catch a leaf between my teeth and bite it, full of the joy of life, such as fills you without reason, with a huge happiness almost indefinable, a kind of magical strength. As I neared the house, I took out the letter for the gardener, and I noted with surprise that it was sealed. I was so amazed and so annoyed that I almost turned back without fulfilling my mission. Then I thought that I should thus display oversensitiveness and bad taste. My friend might have sealed it unconsciously, worried as he was. The manor, the manor looked as though it had been deserted the last 20 years. The gate, wide open and rotten, held. One wondered how. Grass filled the paths. You could not tell the flower beds from the lawn. At the noise I made, kicking a shutter, an old man came out from a side door and was apparently amazed to see me there. I dismounted from my horse and gave him the letter. He read it once or twice, turned it over, looked at me with suspicion, and asked, Well, what do you want? I answered sharply, You must know it as you've read your house. He appeared overwhelmed. He said, So, are you going in his room? I was getting impatient. Parbleu! Do you intend to question me by chance? He stammered. No, monsieur. Only it has not been opened since the death. If you will wait 5 minutes, I will go in to see whether I interrupted angrily. See here, are you joking? You can't go in that room as I have the key. He no longer knew what to say. Then, monsieur, I will show you the way. Show me the stairs and leave me alone. I can find it without your help. But still, monsieur. Then I lost my temper. Now be quiet, else you'll be sorry. I roughly pushed him aside and went into that house. I first went through the kitchen, then crossed 2 small rooms occupied by the man and his wife. From there, I stepped into a large hall. I went up the stairs, and I recognized the door my friend had described. I opened it with ease and went in. The room was so dark that at first I couldn't distinguish anything. I paused, arrested by the moldy and stale odor peculiar to deserted and condemned rooms of dead rooms. Then gradually my eyes grew accustomed to the gloom, and I saw rather clearly a great room in disorder, a bed without sheets, having still its mattresses and pillows, one of which bore the deep print of an elbow or a head, as if someone had just been resting on it. The chairs seemed all in confusion. I noticed that a door, probably that of a closet, had remained ajar. I first went to the window and opened it to get some light, but the hinges of the door and the hinges of the outside shutters were so rusted that I couldn't loosen them. I even tried to break them with my sword, but did not succeed. As those fruitless attempts irritated me, and as my eyes were by now adjusted to the dim light, I gave up hope of getting more light and went toward the writing desk. I sat down in an armchair, folded back the top, and opened the drawer. It was full to the edge. I needed but 3 packages, which I knew how to distinguish, and I started looking for them. I was straining my eyes to decipher the inscriptions when I thought I heard, or rather felt, a rustle behind me. I took no notice, thinking a draft had lifted some curtain. But a minute later, another movement, also almost indistinct, sent a disagreeable little shiver over my skin. It was so ridiculous to be moved thus even so slightly that I would not turn around, being ashamed. I had just discovered the second package I needed, and was on the point of reaching for the third, when a great and sorrowful sigh, close to my shoulder, made me give a mad leap 2 yards away. In my spring, I had turned round, my hand on the hilt of my sword, and surely, had I not felt that, I should have fled like a coward. A tall woman, dressed in white, was facing me, standing behind the chair in which I had sat a second before. Such a shoulder ran through me. Oh, I'm sorry. Such a shudder. What is it with me today? Such a shudder ran through me that I almost fell back. Oh, no one who has not felt them can understand those gruesome and ridiculous terrors. The soul melts your heart, seems to stop your whole body, and your whole body becomes limp as a sponge, and your innermost parts seem collapsing. I do not believe in ghosts, and yet I broke down before the hideous fear of the dead. And I suffered, oh, I suffered, more in a few minutes, in the irresistible anguish of supernatural dread than I have suffered in my whole life. If she had not spoken, I might have unalived. But she did speak. She spoke in a soft and plaintive voice, which set my nerves vibrating. I could not say that I regained my self-control. Nope, I was past knowing what I did. But the kind of pride I have in me, as well as a military pride, helped me to maintain almost, in spite of myself, an honorable countenance. I was making a pose for myself and for her, whatever she was, woman or phantom. I realized this later, for at the time of the apparition, I could think of nothing. I was afraid. She said, "Oh, you can be a great help to me, monsieur." I tried to answer, but was unable to utter one word. A vague sound came from my throat. She continued, "Will you? You can save me, cure me. I suffer terribly. I always suffer. I suffer. Oh, I suffer." And she sat down gently in my chair. She looked at me. "Will you?" I nodded my head, being still paralyzed. Then she handed me a woman's comb of tortoise shell and murmured, "Comb my hair. Oh, comb my hair. That will cure me. Look at my head, how I suffer, and my hair, how it hurts." Her loose hair, very long, very black, it seemed to me, hung over the back of the chair, touching the floor. Why did I do it? Why did I, shivering, accept that comb? And why did I take between my hands her long hair, which left on my skin a ghastly impression of cold, as if I had handled serpents? I don't know. That feeling still clings about my fingers, and I shiver when I recall it. I combed her. I handled, I know not how, that hair of ice. I bound and unbound it. I plaited it as one plaits a horse's mane. She sighed, bent her head, seemed happy. Suddenly she said, "Thank you," tore the comb from my hands, and fled through the door, which I noticed was half opened. Left alone, I had for a few seconds the hazy feeling one feels waking up from a nightmare. Then I recovered. I ran to the window and broke the shutters by my furious assault. A stream of light poured in. I rushed to the door, through which that being had gone. I found it locked and immovable. Then a fever of flight seized on me, a panic, the true panic of battle. I quickly grasped the 3 packages of letters from the open desk. I crossed the room running. I took the steps of the stairs 4 at a time. I found myself outside. I don't know how, and seeing my horse close by, I mounted in one leap and left it at full gallop. I didn't stop till I reached ruin and drew up in front of my house. Having thrown the reins to my orderly, I flew to my room and locked myself inside to think. Then, for an hour, I asked myself whether I had not been the victim of hallucination. Certainly, I must have had one of those nervous shocks, one of those brain disorders, such as give rise to miracles, to which the supernatural owes its strength. And I had almost concluded that it was a vision, an illusion of my senses. When I came near the window, my eyes by chance looked down. My tunic was covered with hairs, long women's hairs, which had entangled themselves around the buttons. I took them off one by one and threw them out of the window with trembling fingers. I then called my orderly. I felt too perturbed to move, to go and see my friend on that day. Besides, I needed to think over what I should tell him. I had his letters delivered to him. He gave a receipt to the soldier. He inquired after me and was told that I was not well. I had had a sunstroke or something along that line. He seemed distressed. I went to see him the next day, early in the morning, bent on telling him the truth. He had gone out the evening before and had not come back. I returned the same day, but he had not been seen. I waited a week. He did not come back. I noticed the police. They searched for him everywhere, but no one could find any trace of his passing or retreat. A careful search was made in the deserted manor. No suspicious clue was discovered. There was no sign that a woman had been concealed there. The inquest gave no result, and so the search went no further. And in 56 years, I have learned nothing more. I never found out the truth. All right, guys, that is the end of this book. So we will be continuing next week, and we'll have to see how it works out as far as being outside next week. For the to do the ghost stories by the campfire. But what I was planning on doing was we're going to start the Legend of Sleepy Hollow for the Halloween season. Okay, we'll start that next week. So we'll probably be in here, and then, like I said, the week after, we're gonna make sure that we're out in out in the yard telling true ghost stories from the files of California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team. So I'm glad you guys came, and it's a short night tonight, but always a pleasure to read for you guys. And I hope you come and see me next week. Tomorrow, I'll be back over on TikTok at California Haunts doing general readings, past, present, future. Quick announcement is I'm going to be expanding on those readings in about a week and a half. I'll be doing once a week. I'll be doing crystal readings for you guys, crystal health readings, and I'll also be doing love readings and also pet readings for your dog and cats. So that's going to be starting up. So 3 days a week we're going to be doing that stuff, and then the other 3 days a week we're going to keep doing our general readings past, past, yeah, the three past. I'm tired tonight. Past, present, and future. God. And so we'll be doing that. So just come on in, and then with the holiday season starting, new things coming, we're going to be doing gingerbread houses and all kinds of things for the holidays. So everything starts up. I'm going to be shooting a lot more video now too, because it's cooler and I can tolerate the heat. Yeah, because there's no heat. I can't stand the heat. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys go, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll start a new book next week, and thank you so much. Thank you. And hang on a second. Let me cue out of here, okay? If it lets me. Come on.